p.m. in Gardner, Kansas. The Kansas City Chiefs are leading the New England Patriots 6-3. And time for the Gardner City Council meeting to come to order. Please rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, some people might be recording the game.
Some people, DVR?
Way to go.
All right.
Mayor Black.
No more updates. No more updates. I will be good. All right, so I have several proclamations. I'm going to stretch my legs and come out in front of the camera here. So, I was told that in order for people to see this on the YouTube feed, it's good for me to have this right here in front of the Zoom camera. So, this first proclamation is for Fire Prevention Month, and our friends at Fire District 1 are not here, but we will get this proclamation over to them. No doubt they're watching the Chiefs game. Whereas the City of Gardner is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting our city, and whereas U.S. fire departments responded to 481,500 home fires in 2019, according to the National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA, and there were 2,980 home fire fatalities reported, representing 80% of all U.S. fire deaths. And whereas cooking is the leading cause of home fires in the United States, where fire departments responded to more than 172,900 fires of this type annually per year. And whereas 2 of every 5 home fires start in the kitchen, with 31% of these fires resulting from unintended cooking. And whereas more than half of reported non-fatal home cooking fire injuries occurred when the victims tried to fight the fire themselves. And whereas children under 5 face a higher risk of non-fire burns associated with cooking than with being burned in a cooking fire. And whereas residents who have planned and practiced a home fire escape plan are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire. And whereas working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reported home fires in half. And whereas Johnson County Fire District number 1 first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education. And whereas the 2020 Fire Prevention Week theme, Serve Up Fire Safety in the Kitchen, effectively serves to remind us to stay alert and use caution when cooking to reduce the risk of kitchen fires. Now therefore it be resolved that I, Steve Shute, Mayor of the City of Gardner, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2020 as Fire Prevention Month in the City of Gardner, and ask the citizens of this community to check their kitchens for fire hazards and use safe cooking practices during Fire Prevention Month, and support the many public safety activities and efforts of Johnson County Fire District number 1, Fire and Emergency Services. And thanks again to our first responders at Johnson County Fire District 1 and for all the work that they do keeping us safe every day. The next proclamation is for Community Planning Month. And we have our Economic Development Director, Dave Knoppick, over here. So I'm going to ask him to come out over here and yes. Whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, boroughs, townships, rural areas, and other places, and whereas community planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people live and work. And whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making the choices that determine the future of their community. And whereas the full benefits of planning requires public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation. And whereas the month of October is designated as National Community Planning Month throughout the United States and its territories. And whereas the American Planning Association and its professional institute, the American Institute of Certified Planners, endorse National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight the contributions sound planning and plan implementations make to the quality of our settlements and environment. And whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of planning commissions and other citizen planners who have contributed their time, and expertise to the improvement of the city of Gardner. And whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions made by professional community and regional planners of the city of Gardner, and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals, now therefore be resolved that I, Steve Shute, Mayor of the city of Gardner, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2020 as Community Planning Month in the city of Gardner in conjunction with the celebration of National Community Planning Month. And please accept this with our great appreciation for all the work that you and your staff do over in community development to keep us moving, keep Gardner moving forward, and keep us blazing new trails. Thank you very much.
Yeah, he's here for 1 meeting. The second meeting, he gets an award.
I know. An easy one. All right, next proclamation is for Public Power Week. Gans Garcia, our utility director, yes. This will be a shorter one, Gans. You don't have to stand so long. Whereas we, the citizens of Gardner, Kansas, place high value on local choice over community services and therefore have chosen to operate a community-owned, locally controlled electric utility, and as customers and owners of our electric utility have a direct say in utility operations and policies. And whereas the city of Gardner's electric utility provides our homes, businesses, schools, social services, and local government agencies with reliable, efficient, and safe electricity, employing sound business practices designed to ensure the best possible service. And whereas the city of Gardner's electric utility is a valuable community asset that contributes to the well-being of local citizens through energy efficiency, customer service, environmental protection, economic development, and safety awareness. And whereas the city of Gardner's electric utility is a dependable, very dependable, and trustworthy institution whose local operation provides many consumer protections and continues to make our community a better place to live and work, and contributes to protecting the global environment. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Steve Shute, Mayor of the city of Gardner, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the week of October 4th through the 10th, 2020, as Public Power Week in the city of Gardner, to recognize the city's electric utility for its contributions to the community and to educate customer owners, policymakers, and employees on the benefits of public power. And you've done an amazing work in the last several years. We continue to make great strides. We've been able to provide a dividend to our community in the last year, and it's through the efforts of you and your team that allowed us to make possible that kind of activity. And so thank you very much, Gans. Please send our regards to your entire staff. Yes. And the last one is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas while considerable progress has been made in the fight against breast cancer, it remains the most commonly diagnosed cancer and the second leading cause of death among women in the United States. And whereas each year it is estimated that more than 260,000 women and more than 2,500 men in the United States will be diagnosed with breast cancer, and more than 41,000 will die as a result of the disease. And whereas National Breast Cancer Awareness Month is a platform for educating women about the importance of early detection of breast cancer through mammography and other methods. And whereas through research and advocacy, significant advances have been made in the fight against breast cancer, including significant decreases in mortality. And whereas this October we recognize breast cancer survivors, one on our dais, those battling the disease, their families and friends who are tireless sources of love and encouragement, and applaud the efforts of our medical professionals and researchers working to find a cure for this deadly disease. Now therefore be resolved that I, Steve Shute, Mayor of the city of Gardner, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2020 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month of the city of Gardner, and we ask the citizens of this community to unite to prevent breast cancer deaths through increased education and regular screening. Thank you so much for all the work that the city of Gardner has been doing in that regard, and the community outreach that we do on a continual basis. I see you're wearing your pink shirt, Tori. You want to stand up and...
Well, I don't know if I need to stand up or anything, but but I can say a couple words. 2020 found me diagnosed with breast cancer, but after 2 surgeries and numerous doctor's appointments, 2020 also found me a breast cancer survivor. So I appreciate this proclamation to get people aware and to get their mammograms early. So thank you.
I'm sure the council will be very happy to know that probably the last large amount of talking I'll be doing this entire meeting.
I doubt that.
Yeah. So no public hearings, but there is public comments, as we always do on this occasion. Now, we don't have a lot of folks in the room today, but we will give them an opportunity to speak if they wish. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to make comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing. If you wish to come forward and speak, there is a clock on the left side facing us and right side on our end. This has a 5-minute time clock. Please keep your comments under 5 minutes. And the only ground rules that we have are no profanity and no personal attacks. Other than that, please come forward and state your name and address for the record, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. The podium is now open.
Hi, good evening. Jennifer Smith, 648 South Oak Street. I may not be able to be here at the end of the new business, so I wanted to make some comments about the social media policy, which I think is extremely needed and updated to suffice for elected officials here and for the future. So a couple of things that when I read over the policy, and several months ago I came forth and talked about the code of conduct and ethical issues within our council members as well to follow the city's policy. One of the things I wanted to make sure somewhere down the line when we do this is accountability for, is it the elected official that makes the comments? What is the repercussion of their position on the council? Any also volunteer committee member. I'm a volunteer committee member in the ADA, but we've yet to have a meeting, so don't know where that's at. But also training. There are venues out there that do social media training, marketing training, how to talk to the media training. I think that's extremely important, that anyone that's going to be the face of our city has that training, so they know what they should say, what they shouldn't say, and how to represent all of us at Gardner. You don't just represent a niche, you represent all of Gardner. I'm born here, raised here, still here. Today is my 51st year birthday, and I'm very proud to be in Gardner. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer, and happy birthday. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there any member of the council who wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Melton, second, Winters, that we approve the consent agenda. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, any abstentions? The consent agenda passes. There's nothing on planning and zoning consent this week. No committee recommendations or old business. New business item number 1. Consider a resolution providing the authority to award the contract and commitment of city funds for the I-35 and Gardner Road interchange project. Michael Kramer, good evening. This is good news.
Yeah, good evening. Very good news. So the item before you, and be sure and please raise your hand or something if you can't hear me, Mayor. So the item before you is the resolution recommending award. Back in 2018, we started out with about $1.4 million. We added to that another $2.5 million in economic and development funding from KDOT. And so we have a pretty good match from KDOT for this project, a total of about $3.9 million. And so Gardner's share of the construction on the project is about $741,000. Again, this project relocates 191st and Gardner Road up to 188th and Gardner Road. It's a project all of you are familiar with. In addition to that relocation, it also provides traffic signals at 188th and Gardner Road, and then temporary improvement traffic signals at both of the northbound and southbound on and off ramps. So will be a very big safety improvement down there, and will also pave the way for economic development, especially along the north corridor there of I-35 and Gardner Road. From here, so this resolution, what it does is it authorizes the KDOT to award the project to the lowest bidder. We had, I believe, 6 bidders ranging from $4.7 million to about $6.3 million. Our construction estimate was right about $5.1 million, so we received very favorable bids. And KDOT, I will tell you, KDOT's estimate was much higher on the project, what they thought it might come in due to COVID. And so KDOT is recommending award to the low bidder, which is Pyramid Contractors. Their low bid amount was $4.66 million. Again, our match on that is $741,000. And with that, I'll leave you with the resolution and open it up.
All right, thank you very much, Michael, appreciate it. Any public comment on new business item number 1? See no one coming forward. Any questions for Michael on this particular project? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if this question is for Jim or Mike, but we're going to pay cash for the $741,000, and then do we intend on issuing debt for repayment of that cash?
Yes.
We do.
Okay.
Essentially, we're paying cash up front just because there's a quick turnaround when KDOT wants to get paid for it. And then we're planning this fall to issue debt for that and design and like right away other costs associated with the project.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
What are we looking at for a time frame, start to finish?
So on the timing of the construction, the KDOT will award it likely before the end of October. So then it takes a little bit for them to get their paperwork in order.
Sure.
And they'll start with some construction this year, but I would expect the in earnest construction to begin after the first of the year. There are milestones in the project, so the 188th Street connection and Locust Road, that all is to be open to traffic by, I believe, July 2nd of 2021.
Okay.
And then the rest of the project by the end of the year, 2021. One question that came up from citizens is about the, closing of the road, over the interstate, the bridge, and the work on the south side. We wouldn't expect that work to happen until sometime in the summer, and I believe they only have about 3 weeks or so to close that is all they're allowed to close. So overall project completion at the latter part, the end of 2021.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Did you have something else? Okay, I did have one question, and it was given to me by a constituent. They asked about the phasing of this, and according to the council action form, this does not include the bridge deck, and they had a question about the timetable for the bridge deck implementation, which is, again, it's not part of this council action form, but they were just wondering when the bridge deck was going to be
correct. And so KDOT's currently evaluating the bridge deck, trying to determine the useful life of that bridge and replacement timeframes compared to that. And so I would expect to hear some more information in the coming months.
Yeah, I think that there was a question about the usability and the lifespan of that deck, and that there's a real concern about the additional trucks that are going on it now because of the 199th Street closure. So, all right, anything else from anybody else before we vote? I will entertain a motion on
So
new business
moved.
item number 1.
Second.
Motion, Gregorczyk, second.
Melton that we adopt resolution 2060, correct? A resolution providing the authority to award the contract and commitment of city funds for the I-35 and Gardner Road Interchange Project Phase 1. City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Melton?
Yes.
Councilmember Baldwin?
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts?
Yes.
Councilmember Winters?
Yes.
Councilmember Gaversick?
Yes.
Resolution 2060 passes. Let's get started on fixing that interchange.
Thank
New
you.
business item number 2. Yes, thank you very much, Michael. Appreciate it. New business item number 2. Consider adopting a resolution approving the execution and delivery of amended and restated development agreement for a development project within the city and waiving notice for the exercise of purchase option in connection with the city's industrial revenue bonds taxable under Federal Law Series 2020, the Main Street Marketplace. Matt Wolf, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. I invited the city's bond counsel, Tyler Ellsworth from Kutak Rock, to participate in today's meeting to give an overview of the development agreement that he worked on.
Great, thank you. Evening, Tyler.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tyler Ellsworth with Kutak Rock. As Matt mentioned, I want to present a resolution for your consideration this evening that relates to the city's development agreement with supermarket developers for construction of the new price chopper, improvements to that shopping center that includes the new price chopper, as well as the renovation of the former grocery store. So that's what this agenda item relates to. As you'll recall, the city entered a development agreement with this developer about a year and a half ago for TIF incentives, CID incentives, and industrial revenue bonds in connection with the developer's completion of certain improvements, including certain infrastructure improvements to renovate and improve that shopping center. And when we were going through those discussions and structuring the deal, supermarket developers made clear to us that their end game here was to get the new grocery store open and then assign their rights under the development agreement and sell the completed store to an affiliate of Costantino's. And so the developer is in the process of making that assignment of their rights under the development agreement and selling the new store to a Costantino's affiliate. And there are two items under the development agreement that we needed to sort of address and have wrapped up before that transfer to Costantino's could occur. So this resolution approves an amended and restated version of the development agreement that the city entered a year and a half ago in order to address these two items. The first of these two items is construction of 2 turn lanes, and this is turning from Main Street onto the access drive that runs north between Quick Trip and Walgreens. There were discussions with the city and the developer about how to coordinate the city's work on Main Street. That's been sort of in progress for some time, certainly in the planning stages for some time, and how to coordinate that work with the developer because the developer is planning on putting those turn lanes in. After much discussion and coordination between the two parties, and also I think with KDOT's input as well, it was determined that the city would complete the road improvements, including the 2 turn lanes, and the developer would contribute an amount of $400,000, essentially into an escrow fund, to the city to pay for those improvements. The city will draw down that $400,000 contribution as the city constructs the improvements. That $400,000 contribution will be treated as a TIF cost, eligible for TIF reimbursement under the development agreement. So that addresses the first of the 2 sets of improvements that we wanted to address. The second set of improvements that we wanted to address relate to the traffic signal at that same intersection. The developer had anticipated putting that traffic signal in at the start of the project. After discussions with KDOT, developer and KDOT came to the conclusion that the signal wasn't warranted, and it may be several years before that signal is warranted. More recent discussions with the developer's engineer indicate that with the development of the 2 out parcels along Main Street, the one west of Quick Trip and the one east of Walgreens, that signal may be warranted in the more immediate future. So the question was how to pay for the cost of that signal. We looked at using the existing CID incentive to pay for that signal. That wasn't really an option. we looked at trying to fit the cost of that signal into the existing TIF incentive. It didn't really work under the existing TIF incentive, and the agreement that we ultimately reached was to add 1 year to the term of the TIF revenue stream. So right now the TIF is set to run for 10 years, and the property tax collections from the new grocery store and the renovated grocery store are used to reimburse costs of infrastructure for road work and other improvements to the shopping center. The city will be responsible if and when that traffic signal is needed to pay for the cost of that signal, but the city will share in the TIF reimbursements that come in year after year. And so in order to do that, the best solution that we arrived at after looking at all the angles was to consider increasing the TIF property tax collections by 1 year. So this agreement would not do that, but is based on bringing additional TIF proceedings to the council in the next 60 days to extend the TIF collections from 10 years to 11 years. So those are, I'll stop there and see if you have any questions for me. Those are really the two primary objectives that we wanted to accomplish with this amended and restated development agreement. And approval of this agreement is really what this resolution before you does this evening.
Thank you very much, Tyler, appreciate it. Any public comment on new business item number 2? Any questions for Tyler or for Matt on the disposition of this resolution? Yes, Council President.
Extending it a year, are we fairly confident that would cover, costs associated with, 3, 4, or 5 years down the road, putting in a traffic light at that area?
That's a very good question. The projections that your financial advisor, Mr. Kimmel, did when we put this TIF project in place in early 2019 anticipate that we would see about $500,000 a year in property tax collections toward the 10th or 11th year of this TIF. The traffic signal is expected to cost around $250,000. So even that $250,000 plus a cushion for interest over several years of repaying that $250,000 principal amount, if you will, should be sufficient to include this in the TIF revenue reimbursement.
Okay, thank you. I have a question as a follow-up to the Council President's question. That is, does that include projected revenues from both the renovated store as well as the 2 out parcels?
It does.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And Mayor, I had a question. I don't remember reading this, but did we have a traffic study done in relationship to that, which
Multiple.
determined the light? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we had multiple traffic studies done, and one of the big problems that we had when we were negotiating out the development agreement was that, yeah, those studies came back as that traffic signal was not warranted, although we knew that at some point in the future with the congestion, with additional development, it was going to.
Yeah, I think it's warranted. I just didn't know if we had a study. Thank you.
Yep, yep. And by the way, we do have the applicant, our friend Joel Riggs from Supermarket Developers here if you want to ask him any questions. Yes?
Tyler, did we look at if the traffic signal still isn't warranted after a year, or at year 11, what our options are?
We did not look at that, and that's a fair question. We were assuming that the traffic signal would be warranted at some point, likely in the first half of the term here, which works out a little bit better for reimbursement than later in the term. But I think even if the traffic signal is warranted towards the end of the term, there should still be, if TIF revenues come in as projected, there should still be sufficient TIF revenues to reimburse both the developer's costs and the city's costs. We did not look at what happens if the traffic signal is warranted in the 11th year or thereafter, although I think at that point probably sufficient time has passed that there might be an opportunity in that situation to look at what particular event had tripped that warrant, requiring a signal at that point, and depending on what event had transpired to change those facts and require that traffic signal, I think the city at that time could look to whoever was generating that new traffic, that new economic activity, and see if there's a way to share the cost of the signal at that point.
Yep, okay, thank you. Great. Anything else? Yes?
Just a quick question for Ryan. Is there any reason I need to abstain since my business is in that shopping center? Would it be safer to?
I mean, so the TIF revenue, Tyler, that's a sales tax TIF?
It's a property tax
Property
only.
tax.
Sales tax goes to the city.
Okay, do you own the building?
No.
Okay,
He's a lessee.
you just pay rent? I think you're fine.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? Move on to a motion on new business item number 2.
So moved. Second.
Motion Melton, second Gregorczyk, that we adopt resolution number 2061. Resolution of the City of Gardner, Kansas, approving the execution and delivery of an amended and restated development agreement for a development project within the city and waiving notice of the exercise of a purchase option in connection with the city's industrial revenue bonds taxable under federal law, Series 2020 for Main Street Marketplace. City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts.
Yes.
Councilmember Winters.
Yes.
Councilmember Gregorczyk.
Yes.
Councilmember Melton.
Yes.
Resolution 2061 passes. Joel, we're on the home stretch.
Thank you, Mayor.
No problem. Have a great evening. New business item number 3, consider adopting a resolution amending the City of Gardner's Personnel Policies 2018 edition, Section 5. Alan Abramovitz, good evening.
So, the staff is recommending adopting a resolution amending our personnel policies, Section 5-106.4. Currently, of course, salaries are determined at the time of hire, promotion, or transfer based on the individual's knowledge, skills, abilities, and experience, and the prevailing market data. Salaries are to be consistent with internal and external equity. The current lateral transfer policy does not allow for that flexibility. So currently, employees transferring into a position at the same salary range shall receive no salary adjustment associated with the transfer. So if somebody has equal experience to someone else that's already in that position, you know, it's a multi-position job, then currently we may have to pay them less than what the other people are getting, which would not be fair. So what we're asking to do is to change this to read: the human resource manager and the city administrator, in consultation with the department director, will determine if there is any change in an employee's salary in order to be consistent with internal and external equity when an employee transfers into a position in the same salary range. Now, that doesn't mean somebody's always going to get a raise, but it gives us the opportunity to look at it and determine what's fair.
Great, thank you very much, Alan. Appreciate that explanation, very concise. Any public comment on new business item number 4, or 3, I should say. New business item number 3. Any questions for Alan on this? Looks like it's pretty much housekeeping from an equity perspective. Any questions over here on this side? Okay, great. I will entertain a motion on resolution number 2062.
So moved.
Second. Motion Melton, second Baldwin, that we adopt resolution number 2062, a resolution providing for the adoption of a revision to the Personnel Policies and Procedures 2018 edition for the City of Gardner, Kansas. City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Roberts.
Yes.
Councilmember Winters.
Yes.
Councilmember Gregorczyk.
Yes.
Councilmember Melton.
Yes.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes. Resolution 2062 passes. Thank you very much, Alan. We have one more for him, Alan, actually. New business item number 4, consider adopting a resolution amending of the City of Gardner's social media policy.
Okay, so our staff is recommending adopting a resolution amending the City of Gardner social media policy. So one thing I do want to make sure everybody understands is that this is not a new policy. This is a policy that's actually been in effect at least since February of 2014, if not before that. So, and what we are doing is bringing it up to date to ensure that it is accurate as far as our organization goes. So, social media has become one of the main channels of communication for many and is an excellent communication tool for public organizations. By leveraging social media as a primary communication tool, the city is engaging its customers on their terms and supporting the goals of service, community, and performance. The City of Gardner social media policy was last revised in February 2014. Social media's risks are similar in nature to those of other types of communication, but are enhanced because of the potential for both multiple contributors and wide circulation of the material. Therefore, to ensure communication to the public is consistent with the goals and objectives of the city, it is important to have a city social media policy that applies to staff, appointed members of boards, commissions, and committees, and the governing body. So the language in the policy has been updated to reflect the current structure of the organization. Additional changes including providing more authority to the city administrator and public information officer to oversee social media and ensuring that this policy applies to boards, commissions, and committees and the governing body. So we've highlighted in yellow the changes, and currently we actually do have our employees sign the acknowledgement form. I don't think that boards and committees receive a copy of this. So that will be one major change, is that all members will receive a copy of it. And they will be asked, current members will be asked to sign the social media policy acknowledgement form. And my recommendation is, in the future, if you, while you're interviewing people for these positions, that one of the requirements that you make clear is that they're going to have to sign this to be nominated to be on that.
So, any comments? I believe we already had a comment on public comments about the social media policy. Any comments from anyone regarding new business item number 4? All right, questions for Alan, and I think there's going to be several, so I'll start on my left.
And for me?
Okay.
How are we gonna?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. How are we gonna? What's I know there's rules about what to do, but what's the rules for the punishment? I guess is how do we handle that? Is that coming later? Or?
There's a question about that.
Right, because I mean,
so right now,
right now
there's no internal controls on this from the standpoint of our self-governance or the governing body rules of procedure.
Sure. Right.
If there would be a willingness on the part of the governing body to amend the rules of procedure to have some sort of I wouldn't call it a set of penalties or whatever you want to call it, self-imposed or disciplinary actions within our own rules for this, then I think that anybody.
I'm not just talking about us either. I mean,
no. But I'm thinking of this from the standpoint of us, because right. You know, we're self-policing on this, and the concerns that people have regarding social media policies. You know, there's only 3 ways that an individual from this governing body can lose their seat. One is through resignation, one is through recall, and one is through an election. And there's no other way for an individual to lose their seat. Obviously, there's incapacitation and death and those kind of things. But that's the ways that we, you know, if we're talking about losing a seat over over a social media comment or something like that, we can't expel a person from the governing body. That's not allowed under state statute. So,
I'm also talking about the commission side.
Yes,
though.
board
So
commissions
We don't
and-
have anything on paper yet for those, like the, different actions, so is that coming later, or?
well, I don't know if there's any, again, we would have to look at, there's already something underneath the rules or the ordinances governing the behavior of boards and commission members regarding, certain actions. I think there's a discussion about whether or not a violation of social media policy is considered egregious. So that would have to be clarified, I think.
One of
the
my
question?
problems is if we're gonna pass this, right, we have nothing in here that says these are the things that can happen if
No.
you violate this.
No, we do not have that in this. What this is basically the employee social media policy that's now extended to cover the board and commission members and the governing body.
So I guess my question is, what would be, if somebody violates it, what are the options?
If a non-elected official violates it,
Right.
what are the repercussions? For Jennifer's question.
Well, actually, Jennifer's question was about governing body members.
Right, well, we know that now, you gave us that breakdown.
Yes, so we know what that is, and we have to make modifications to the governing body rules of procedure for that.
Right, but
Given-
back
yes,
to,
Yes, Ryan.
So, just like if you were dealing with a situation with an employee, there are lots of shades of gray on violation of social media policy. You can have minor violations where, you just give kind of corrective direction to the individual. And then relative to your individuals on your appointed boards and commissions, the most severe punishment would be every one of them is subject to language that they can be removed for cause. That's kind of what you have. I don't know that you're gonna be able to, Jim can tell you this from being a supervisor over however many years, the punishment should fit the crime, and you just kind of have to take each situation as it comes.
Well, I would think certainly if somebody doesn't abide by this, the next time their term comes up, the commissions, they're not gonna be reappointed.
Well, I guess that's to Rich's point. It doesn't state anything in there, and we really, this policy is all encompassing. It really hits three different groups, right? Elected officials, appointed board and committee members, right? That really answer to us, the governing body, right? That's who chose them. That's who they're representing. And then you have employees who
Correct.
are under the city administrator. So you have three different groups with three different outcomes there. So I don't know, maybe if we're gonna add something to specify what the repercussions are, that they're gonna need to be clear as to who we're talking about.
That's understandable, and maybe something that we may be able to do administratively through a training session.
Sure.
That's one of the things that I was gonna ask about is, can we do social media training? As Jennifer pointed out, I think it's very important that we all have that kind of understanding and training on these procedures,
Absolutely.
these policies, vis-a-vis, their impact on us and the community.
Sure, I'd be happy to work with Danica and Amy on putting something together if you'd like.
Absolutely, and I think members of boards and commissions should get that training as well, and I know that, do we do that on a regular basis with the employees?
Not specifically social media, no.
Okay, yeah, we may want to do social media workshops as well with the employees. We understand that there are some employees that are more active on social media than others, and we just need to have that reminder as well.
That's true.
Yeah,
Yes.
Mayor, I appreciated the document. I think it's a good first step in the right direction. And to Mark's point, it does touch three different groups for which elected members touch two of the three. I just wanted to formulate, or I want to see this formulated so that 5, 10 years from now, considering that this is from February of 2014, so 6 to 10 years from now, it still has viability, if you will. I don't know that passing it tonight without, to Mark's point, without understanding what that policy or what this new business item number 4 holds with respects to the sanctions, thank you. I don't know that we've got the whole enchilada. So I'd like to see kind of the last leg, if you will, of what those sanctions look like and what surrounding communities have done in the same vein.
Okay.
Understand that if training is once a year, twice a year, once a quarter, what that might be, whether the training might be a part of the sanctions. So if, Randy, the commissioner, steps out of line, or Randy, the volunteer on the Economic Development Board, steps out of line, maybe he goes or she goes through that training before, any hand slapping is done. So, and then I'd like to understand, although I agree with the mayor, I'd like to understand the elected. And again, I'm not looking at today, I'm looking at 6 to 10 years from now as to what that really stands for on the elected side. So I don't know that I'm quite comfortable supporting this tonight without those items addressed.
Well, I would say this, as in response to your remark about a minute ago. I would say you don't even have people sign this unless they've gone through a training session. I mean, I would not want to sign something without knowing the full impact or implications of having signed that document. And so before, yes.
You're forgetting something. This is already in place. We're amending this.
It's
right.
in place.
The 2014 version is in place.
Correct.
That's correct. But
these changes.
no member of the governing body or boards and commissions have been trained or familiar with this set of procedures. And that's what I'm
Officer, I
saying.
didn't know that law. Ignorance is not a defense.
Yes, I understand that, and yet they've not been subject to these either. So that's
Sure
the
they are.
difference.
It's on the books since 2014.
Not us. We've not been subject to it.
Not us, because it's not something that's changed, but as far as the rest of the discussion goes.
The volunteer side.
Yes.
Can I jump in here?
Yes.
So back to Ryan's point about the several shades of gray, when you're talking about violations, if what we want to avoid is coming up with some type of matrix where, there's a prescribed penalty for first, second, third violations. And even if, you look at a progressive discipline continuum, you still want to look at the individual incident and weigh what it's going to take to change the behavior. And if we prescribe specific discipline, then you get into that area where you've got one person being disciplined higher than the next person that did something that is totally different. So if you're looking to prescribe discipline or an action by the council, that's
And we would have to have everything that could potentially happen being labeled out to say this.
right. You have to put each individual incident in context before you take corrective action.
Because I also think it's difficult too, and I mean, it's a little vague to me on, are they speaking on behalf of the city? Are they on a government site, but there are personal? Are they on their personal? I mean, it just gets kind of gray in that area as well. And so I think.
Yeah, and I
It
think
did
it
state
kind
if
of
you're
covers.
representing the city.
Yeah, it's more about, it's not just city sites, it's discussing city business.
Right.
So even if somebody comments on something that's unrelated to the city and people find it offensive, if they're not representing the city, then it's not a violation of this policy.
I think, Jim, to your point then, I'd just like to understand what those reasonable standards are. Keep them gray to Ryan's point, but I really don't know what those reasonable standards, what that definition is.
Well, there's a list in the policy of
Yeah, I was
things
gonna
you
say,
cannot discuss.
if you look, for as far as the non-employees, if you look, I believe, on page 7 of the policy, it does, under F, it does talk to that as far as appointed or elected officials should not upload, post, transmit, or make available content known to be false, misleading, or fraudulent, or to post photos that infringe on trademark, copyright, or patent right of others. And appointed or elected officials should not post non-public or confidential information, such as information related to employees, personnel data, claims, or lawsuits, or other non-public or confidential information. And then appointed or elected officials should not use city-owned equipment to post to personal sites content that violates existing city policies, that exhibits hate, bias, discrimination, and pornography, libelous, or otherwise defamatory content.
It almost seems like because of the three different groups, that the pieces that are specific to elected officials should go in as a note in the governing body rules and procedures.
Well, I
Leave
think
this
that-
for employees, and just like we have for, the governing body rules and procedures, you could address boards and commissions there.
We don't address anything for boards and commissions under the
We
governing
could.
body rules of procedure. I don't
I'm
know if
saying
I
we
want,
could
I
add
don't
to
know
it.
if I want to muddy the waters. I mean, we have a set of ordinances already for appointed boards and commissions.
So I'm saying, you could do something just like that, like we have in the governing body rules and procedures. You could add the pieces, in other words, break this apart. Right, city administrator handles his employees. Governing body is held to the constituents, and governing, commissions and commissions could have either something added to their ordinance or to a separate section in the governing body rules and procedures.
I think it would be good to keep it all in the same
I
place.
don't want it in three places.
I mean, we could just put a note on there. I mean, it says for elected officials, right?
Pursuant to the city's social media policy, these are the prescribed, issues that apply to the governing body. We can have that in the governing body rules of procedure. Okay, we can do that for the boards and commissions master ordinance. We can do that then also for any kind of employee policies that are prescribed. But I wouldn't want to have these in three different places. That means you have to change it in three different places if it's modified.
Only if it applies to that group.
No.
I mean, you really do have three different groups here.
I think we're overcomplicating.
For all intents and purposes, majority of what's stated involving elected officials, it's not like the city can even really impose anyway. It's either a law that's being broken, or your constituents are gonna do something about it,
Well, that's where.
as we've already established.
That's where the remedies would be falling under the governing body rules of procedure.
Good luck finding a remedy.
Yeah, Ryan, would it be appropriate to put that in this policy or in the governing rules?
What's that?
Penalty for not abiding by this?
Well, so, talking about the three different groups, in terms of employees, every policy that we have, equal opportunity in the workplace, harassment in the workplace, we don't have a penalty matrix in there. We have a general requirement that employees are required to follow city policies and procedures. So to me, it would be out of place for that group to put a penalty matrix in here. You would deal with it
Right.
like you would every other disciplinary matter. For the boards and commissions, to me, if you were looking for a middle ground on that one, you kind of have to look at that group and say, because you do have broader discretion with that group because they are appointed by you all as to what the penalty could be. They're unpaid, unlike employees, so you're not going to suspend them. You could, I suppose, suspend them temporarily from their duties on the board, but then what are you doing to the board? Your only current remedy, the only discipline for them is to remove them. So the only other thing you would consider is do we want to consider discipline short of removal for that group of employees? I think, for this body, for the elected officials, state law, I wouldn't touch that.
Mm-hmm. Correct. I think the only other remedy would be like a censure or something like that, but that's.
But I think if you.
We've been down that road a few times.
Yeah, but I think if you were looking for a middle ground for the appointed boards and commissions, I don't know why you'd limit it to social media. You've got the removal for cause, you know, if you were looking for something short of removal, it shouldn't be limited to social media, it should be broader than that.
And I think it is right now in the current ordinance.
It just says removal. I
It says
think.
removal, so it's broad enough as it is, correct?
Well, it brings in the question, do you wanna have something other than removal, or non-removal as your choices for that group? I think we can all agree that the employee group doesn't matter for this conversation, right? Yeah. So, we're talking about the boards and commissions.
Okay, so it sounds like we're kind of talking in circles at this point. Question I've got here is, do we want to move forward with this action this evening, or do we want to have this go back to the staff for a little bit more research and consideration? And do we want to give them specific direction as to what they want to do? That's what we want them to do, I should say.
That would be the question, what do you want to go back to the staff for?
Well, you're the one who'd like to, I mean, would you like to see this considered at all?
Reading this, sitting in this seat, it doesn't matter if it exists or doesn't exist.
I mean, do we want to subject ourselves to, I'm talking about self-governance here. Subject
I think
ourselves
we
to the
already
same
subject
social media
ourselves to these
policy,
things.
to the same social media policy as we asked our employees to follow.
I think we are.
I think we already are.
Yeah, it's in there. I'm okay with the way it is.
Some might maintain that we don't, but that's, I mean,
That's opinion based.
I know it is.
Everything's opinion, so it's-
I know it is. What are the thoughts?
I'm okay with everything the way it is. The
The changes to the social media policy?
All we're doing is that, we're just clarifying.
Make a motion.
Second.
All right, motion Melton, second Winters, that we, I'll go back here, adopt resolution number 2063, a resolution providing for the adoption of a revision to the social media policy for the city of Gardner, Kansas. Any further discussion?
Are we gonna add anything about training for social media
I think
training
that
that
would
we
just
were
be part of
talking
the
about?
administrative.
Or that's just administrative, that we don't need that added to the motion?
I mean, you've directed us to do it, so we'll do it.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't think that
Good point.
we would have people
Yeah.
sign this unless they've gone through a training
Okay.
session.
Okay,
So,
yeah, I have that note.
okay, thank you. City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Winters,
Yes.
Councilmember Zaborczyk,
Yes, I'll support with the training.
Councilmember Melton,
Yes.
Councilmember Baldwin,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
yes.
Resolution 2063 passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to, I believe that's the end of our regular agenda. We'll move on to council updates. Is there anything the staff has for the men and women on this dais? I will start with City Attorney Dank.
Not this evening, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Finance Director Matt Wolf.
Not tonight.
Great. City Clerk.
I believe we have 3 or 4 members interested in joining the Public Works and Accessibility Committee. So I'll
Yay.
send that out and start scheduling that.
Oh, that's wonderful. We can have meetings again. We haven't had a quorum. That's why we haven't been meeting, Jennifer, so it'll be nice to have that back together again. Yes, thank you. And we have the members of the interview committee identified? Okay, good, excellent. Chief, it's good to see you back, sir. Have anything for us?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I included a information packet in the Friday Minute memo on UTVs and golf carts. So I wanted to see if anybody had any questions about that at this point.
So how are we determining street legality here? Just the standard equipment, the headlights, taillights, those kind of things, license plate? Do we need a license plate on those, or do we need to just?
He listed all the.
Yeah, it's all listed.
Yeah, it's, you know, it really kind of, it was a good educational piece for me to realize what went into a lot of this. You know, you can get very, very broad, be very, very restrictive, very, very prohibited on what you do and how you do it. One thing that we did notice is that there was a lot of the communities that have approved these, in our opinion, seem to have been rural communities which would be considered, in my opinion, an agriculture or a farming community that have allowed some of these. There is an agency here in the county that does allow both. In my opinion, their ordinance is super restrictive on it. But I mean, you can get down to, prohibiting when, where, how, all this takes place. So it was just a quick read. Can we do it? Yes. Can it be done? Yes. There's going to be a lot of work to get it done. So, any other questions?
Will this be an agenda item then at some point?
Not unless we get any type of direction to move forward with it at this point. That's gonna come from you all sitting up there to give us direction to move forward with it. So at this point, no, it was just an information of, what, when, where, well, and where and how.
Are we getting a lot of requests regarding UTVs right now?
I have never gotten one.
I got a handful in Facebook Messenger or through email or whatever, but I'll be honest with you, with the amount of effort that you guys are gonna have to go through to make this happen, I don't know if it's worth it at the end, because for a handful of people who would do it.
Well, and I think it's gonna be very hard to enforce.
I agree.
Not being on the state highway or going,
Well, there's some legalities
Yeah.
because we did learn that there are some municipalities that decided, we think the verbiage fits and we are gonna allow them. That would be something that we would have to get with the city attorney on. But, I'll just, in my opinion, I'm very, very concerned about adding these vehicles to the streets and safety of our citizens. Some of these things are amazing. I mean, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 vehicles that can go 70, 80 miles an hour. And to your point, Councilman Roberts, is that, we would have to figure out how to police those. And a valid concern is that if Joe decides to do the right thing and jump through all the hoops and get his vehicle registered, and then Bob sees Joe riding his and goes, oh, these are legal on the street, go get it and let's take off. And then here comes one of our guys stopping him going, oh, you gotta jump through all these hoops and stuff. So we wanted to include that because that question had came up, and we wanted it to be a quick read, and if there was anything else that you guys might want to know about, we certainly are gonna be all ears.
Yeah, I had a handful of people, or maybe just shy of a handful, speak to me about this, and the part of the conversation that came up that dissuaded them, although they had interest, was property tax. A lot of them have purchased these with no titles, whether they're secondhand or purchased brand new with no title, and they were truly intended for the ranch or the farm or go to the dunes in Oklahoma or whatever the case might be. So, property tax would be a component to this, and they would probably, and I'm not an expert, but probably quote unquote get caught through the licensing stage of this as to they would have to pay property tax on this vehicle. So
Only if they want to put it on the street. They want
correct.
to keep doing all those things they were doing, they keep doing that.
No, you're exactly right, Mark. But if they want to put it on the street and they have to go through the hoops, as Jay spoke of, they would have to have a license, and therefore they would have to pay property tax. So it was a moot point at that point with them, because they don't want to pay any tax. They don't even want Uncle Sam to know they own it.
Exactly.
So
You'd have to treat it like a motorcycle, and you'd have to have the title and the registration and everything else.
So I think it was a good exercise, to Chief Belcher's point, but I don't know that there's enough there to pursue it.
Okay. All right, then
If we get enough people interested, look out later.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chief, appreciate it.
Nice to see you, Chief.
Yes, absolutely. Gons Garcia, Utilities, you have anything for us?
No, sir.
How did our windstorm that we had about a week ago? I know that a lot of folks lost some trees and branches. How did our power lines hold up?
They were on the service line, no major outages on the city equipment. They were more localized.
Yep.
Yeah, but we got them restored fairly quick.
Yep. So we love about our responsive electric utility. Thank you. Appreciate it. Nick, Parks and Rec, how you doing, sir? Good seeing you.
I'm good, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. What, got anything for us from Parks and Rec right now?
We do not have anything to add right now. I'm sure Jason will have some more to add in a couple weeks when he joins back again, so.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming in this evening.
Yeah, absolutely, thank you.
Yes, Public Works, Michael Kramer.
Yeah, I don't have anything this evening. I'm excited for the I-35 and Gardner Road project to.
All right, thank you so
started
much.
here.
Yes, Community Development, Dave Nopick.
Nothing to add this evening.
Guys are really busy over there right now.
Yes, we're
lots of
busy
things
and
to
I'm
plan.
learning a lot.
Got the timesheet thing fixed? You were scratching your head on that one for a while.
Let's just put it this way, there's a lot of software packages and a lot of administrative elements to the job.
Yes, sir. Okay, City Administrator, anything from your neck of the woods?
No, I know the body's waiting for some updates on a couple developments we've talked about in the past. We are waiting for the other side to respond and provide us information. So I don't have anything yet, but we're expecting it soon. Should have something by the next meeting. With regard to the CARES Act, Amy Nast has been working on a project. We do have a deadline for procuring anything or putting software or other things in place by December 30th, which we're really pushing that deadline as everybody else in the county is. If the money is not expended by then, it just goes back. Whatever we get back to the county and then back to the federal government. So we are looking at a number of different things. One of the big projects is here in the council chambers to get our audio visual things upgraded so that the issues we had, some of the technical issues we had today, don't happen again. And so that you can see people when they're zooming in on your screen versus on that in front of you. We're gonna mount a camera behind so people at the podium can be seen. And then we're looking at a system where whoever's speaking on the dais is full screen on the picture. So those are things that will help facilitate community participation and also allow our staff to zoom in without any issues.
There's also some voice-activated cameras that can be installed where if you're speaking into that microphone, for example, it will trigger this camera automatically.
Right.
So you can change the perspective of the room based on where that individual's speaking. So that'll be good to have as well.
So we're just kind of battling what everybody else is because everybody wants the same things at the same time. So it was just like the plexiglass stuff out front when we first tried to get it. Now it's, hands-free sinks and hands-free toilets, and so everybody's trying to get their hands on those things. But we're working through it, and you guys, we're working through it, and we'll have
get their hands on.
Thinking the hands on the toilet, that's the least of my problems.
All right. So I'm done. That's it.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jim. I know you guys are working hard. Thanks again. And our folks working remotely are feeling supported, and things are continuing to move in that
Yes.
direction. Absolutely.
I had a talk with Danica today, and she was like, "You're gonna have trouble getting everybody back." So, combination of school and we've been honestly more productive than I thought we would be working remotely. But we learned the technology and we're adapting and doing well. So.
That's great. Well, this is definitely one of those things that's coming out of the pandemic, making us more nimble and much more welcoming or open to technology. So thank you. All right, I'm going to start with Mark Baldwin on council updates for staff.
Some staff folks down there?
No, I did not. Who did I miss?
Oh, okay.
Come on.
Okay, my bad.
Yeah.
Michael, do you have an updated time frame on 175th Street? I know it's getting close.
Santa Fe and Waverly?
No, it is getting very close to being opening. I did reach out to the contractor late last week to get an updated schedule from them, and so we'll have that soon and can maybe send something out to you in maybe a Friday memo.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Yes. Anything else? Okay, great. Tori Roberts.
I don't have anything, but I do want to thank you again for the proclamation for Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Well,
thank you very much.
Absolutely, no problem.
If it gets the word out, that's the best thing. So.
Absolutely. Councilmember Gorsuch.
Thank you, Mayor. What's the status on the old police station? And the reason why I asked Jim is, not to put you on the spot by any means, but I just see that the iron is hot to strike with respects to commercial development coming to our community and available land, and it's a prime spot, so that's why I'm following up.
So we got an assessment on the property, or no, not assessment, an appraisal on the property, and we are talking to another local business about doing some moving from one place to another. So we're working through that now, and it should be relatively soon.
And then, I know this precedes the mayor's time as well as mine, but if and when that sails, we were gonna roll those funds into the new police justice center, if I'm not mistaken.
I know there was discussion about
Correct.
that at one time. We actually, I don't see any pressing needs at the police station. I think the money can be better spent elsewhere. I mean, we have infrastructure needs, we have sidewalks and curbs and other things that we could use the money for that are higher priorities than.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the only thing we weren't able to get that was on our wish list was the perimeter fence at the Justice Center, but I think that's something that our police force hasn't really had a lot of, concerns about.
That is definitely a want, or a want, not a need.
Yeah, okay, great.
And the mayor, I didn't want to steal any thunder. Were you going to address Heath Freeman's email?
I wasn't, but you can go ahead and address it, absolutely.
Okay, I guess he sent it to me.
Yeah.
He just wanted to have this read into the record. It says, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to take a brief moment to publicly thank the city administrator and Director Kramer for their assistance in having a badly deteriorating curb patched at the end of our driveway. City staff reviewed and repaired within the same week of me inquiring, and their efforts are greatly appreciated, especially by my tires. Their jobs are often thankless, but I did not want the work to go unrecognized.
Great.
And I would piggyback on Mr. Freeman's email. I know several residents in the Willow Springs neighborhood received the same quality work by our staff. And I received numerous, thank yous, et cetera, for which I took no credit, but wanted to pass that on to our staff. Then I know I sent a note to Jim for some patchwork on Moonlight. I think that was northbound, south of Moonlight School, by our city staff as well. Some asphalt, pretty large piece of asphalt. So I just wanted to extend my thanks as a piggyback to Mr. Freeman. That's all I had, sir.
Yep, and I'll also add in the patchwork that was done, the excellent patchwork that was done out of Celebration Park too, for the parking lot out there. It's a lot of folks that I've spoken to over there that have utilized the facilities are very, very happy that they don't have to dodge potholes anymore out there. So I want to also bring up that and thank both Parks and Rec and Public Works for helping get that resolved in the short term. So thanks again. Council President.
Yeah, I've been asking Jim, or kind of pushing on the website, on the city website, to have a central location for project updates, and I see that we're starting to work on that now, and I appreciate that. I want to thank all the directors and Danica and Jim for working on that, and maybe we can continue to increase it a little bit or expand it, but just a central location where public can get on and say, oh, I wonder where we are with I-35 overpass, or I wonder where we are with 175th Street, and they can go on and say, oh, it's supposed to be done spring of 21 or whatever. So I appreciate that, and we'll keep working on it.
I know that Amy Nass has been working hard on a lot of that stuff. Just continue to work with the department heads, and it's good to have more information to the folks in the public than less. Absolutely. So thank you. Council Vice President, last but not least.
I have nothing. I know.
Whoa.
I know. I had to double check myself. I was like, what? So.
Well, to be honest, I know everyone wants to get to the game, so I'm going to go ahead and keep my remarks like almost to zero. Thank you again for staff and for your work. And we will move on to the next meeting next week. We'll have a lot more stuff going on, and onward and upward. So with that, I will entertain a motion
So
to
moved.
adjourn. Motion, Gregorsek, second, Melton, that we adjourn. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, any abstentions? We are adjourned.